Welcome to What's Your St. John's Story, a 30-minute segment sponsored by St. John's United, highlighting connectivity within our community through storytelling. I'm Rachel Simonson with the St. John's Foundation, and today we are talking with my colleagues, Tom Schlotterback, who is the Vice President for Mission Advancement at St. John's and President of the St. John's Foundation, and Heather Estus, who is the Director of Donor Relations and Annual Programs. Yep. Got it. We were talking about that earlier. Tom has the longest name. You have the longest title. And today we're talking about advancing generosity. And many of you have watched prior segments that we have done on our campaign for resident care. And we are pleased to make an announcement today. So I'm going to turn it right over to Tom. And would you share the good news about our campaign for resident care?
Yes, happy to, Rachel. We have very good news. You might recall that in the year 2018, our foundation board, together with our board of directors, agreed that we could go ahead and launch what we called the Campaign for Resident Care, a very ambitious campaign, the largest ever in the history of our organization. $17 million was the goal, $9 million of that in capital funding, the hope of building an affordable housing project, which came to be known as Chapel Court Apartments. And then the second half, $8 million seeking endowed funds that would help sustain the lives of residents, not only within Chapel Court Apartments, but within our other St. John's communities as well. So you always wonder when you start a campaign of that scale how it might turn out, but I'm pleased to report that as of April 1st, 2022, no fooling, we have reached our goal, a grand total of, on the endowment side, $8,118,173.25. Nice. I believe I have that correct.
Yes.
So our thanks to all donors who sustained us in fulfilling that effort, and our thanks also to the sources for our capital side. We raised actually over $9 million, as it turned out, $9.58 million. So a very successful campaign. We're well pleased, and most of all pleased for our residents who now have wonderful affordable housing in those Chapel Court Apartments, 56 units in all, and they're completely full. And now funds that will help sustain their lives and maintain their dignity to the end of life, which we're very pleased about.
Yes, because at St. John's United, when somebody comes to call St. John's their home, and they exhaust their resources, we have something that we say.
It's simply two words: they stay.
They stay.
They
Yep.
stay.
And that's what our kind donors have generously offered to make happen for a number of our residents. And I can just report that I was pleased to work with a number of those donors. And there were 233 of them, all meaningful gifts, from $3 that came out of the pocket of one of our staff people, when we went to our staff and invited them to participate in the campaign, all the way up to 2 gifts of 7 figures or more. So the largest gift was $2 million.
People were very generous.
Very, very generous community. And we at the foundation talk about generosity in terms of the 3-legged stool, and that was one of the legs of the stool. Tom, would you share a little bit more about that stool?
Yeah, the health of the foundation really depends on those 3 legs. We speak of the first leg, which is really essential, the annual funds that come in through a variety of sources of gifting. That's one leg of the stool that supports all that we do. The second one would be those capital campaign ventures, such as the Chapel Court Apartments. These are capital projects of large or small scale. And the third area are the endowment funds, the third leg. And you put those together and you've got a very sturdy stool on which to set the foundation upon, and we've been growing and successful in all 3 of those, and we want to maintain that into the future.
Absolutely, and we're going to talk about what's next for that 3-legged stool in just a moment. But Heather, we'd like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. You are relatively new to the Billings community, relatively new to St. John's. Tell us about how you got to St. John's and your role at St. John's.
Yeah, well, I have been in professional fundraising for a little over 25 years, mostly in the Las Vegas area, and then most recently in Orange County, California. And just like many, I had a dream to live in an open, wide land, have horses of my own in my backyard, and 4 seasons. So that was very important, considering that we wanted the horses to have the beauty of that as well. So followed the dream and led me to Billings, Montana. And I think I like to say that St. John's found me. We found each other. And it has been a great match. I'm looking forward to helping St. John's with what's next in the realm of building the annual fund, which I refer to as the blood of the organization, really what keeps us going, and not only that, but educates the community and the donors that are participating on really what we're doing.
Well, welcome to St. John's and welcome to Montana, where you have experienced all 4 seasons within the span of 7 days.
Probably, yes. Yeah, a lot of variety there. I love it.
A lot of variety there. Well, we'll come back to you and be more specific about your role in just a minute. But Tom, would you explain the nature of how Heather's role came to be and what you see as far as what's next for St. John's Foundation?
Right, thanks. The foundation has evolved in time, as you know, Rachel. We started out in a very small scale way with staffing capacity, and you have to grow into that, of course, one step at a time. And we've added human resource pieces along the way that addressed some key needs. One was planned giving, an area that you are very familiar with, working with donors who really want to thoughtfully plan out gifts that are very meaningful to them, not only in the short term, but even the long term in matters of legacy. So that was key to get into place. Another important work we had has to do with community events, bringing people together, celebrating the goodness of St. John's United, helping people connect with the story of St. John's United, and also giving back to the community at large, expressing our thanks that we're part of the larger community. We also added an important human resource piece in that we called forth a Director of Volunteer Services. And this is really a key part of philanthropy, which is the love of people. And often people think of philanthropy as only having to do with matters of finance, money, but it also has to do with volunteer services, how we invest our time and our energy. So all those put together have to do with philanthropy. So we were fortunate to hire a very capable person to guide that. Another key area we needed to grow into was grants. There are lots of grant resources out there, but to connect with those resources, it requires somebody who has the capacity to complete proper applications, and then if you are awarded grants, to manage those grants, to make sure that the funds are used with highest integrity, and then there's always matters of reporting back to the grant sources. So we were able to recently hire somebody to step into that role as well. And the one really large remaining piece that loomed, which really is the lifeblood of a foundation, had to do with annual funding. So for the last couple of years, we've been gearing up to make sure that we had capacity to get somebody to step into that role. And at the beginning of this year, we were able to make a very fitting hire in the person of Heather. We posted the position in December. We had very strong applicants. We were very pleased about that, so we felt good that we expressed what it is we were seeking, and the people who applied were all very fitting for the role, and we're very pleased to offer the position to Heather, and she said yes to us. And so we've just gone through a process now of working on the strategic planning of what she'll be doing. That's been presented to all of her staff colleagues with strong affirmation, and now she's recently presented to our board of directors as well, and also received strong affirmation. So that's the big what next for us in the foundation, is to make sure this lifeblood is especially healthy and well, and that'll help fuel all of the other aspects of the foundation's work as well.
All right, well, Heather,
Yeah.
if you wouldn't mind, just talk a little bit about your approach to donor
Yeah.
relations.
Well, I think the first part of it, just like with any relationship, was figuring out what was really needed for the organization, and then being able to match what experience and skill set and the resources that the foundation had, and put that together to help them achieve that next step. And so the beginning was really assessing where St. John's was as an organization, assessing the community, all of the things that make a strong annual fund program, and then figuring out how do we take it there, and who do we need to help us get there. And so we came up with a great plan to incorporate some things that have been used in the past very successfully, and some things that are fairly new, including the first step was really looking at the infrastructure and building the plan, but then who's going to oversee that plan? In addition to the board, in addition to the staff, we also wanted input from the outside community. And so putting together a generosity committee was the first step, and what that generosity committee will do will oversee the implementation of the different tactics and strategies that we're going to be using. More importantly, I saw great need to tell St. John's story a little bit deeper. What I found was interviewing not only the staff but also the community was that people loved St. John's, and we had a great reputation. But they really knew us for only a few things. And the reality is, one of the things that I discovered as well was that there's so much underneath the St. John's umbrella. And there's a lot of different things that we do, but the community doesn't necessarily know that we do them. I don't even think sometimes the people that know us pretty well know everything that we do. In addition to that, I think there's some other demographics that we can reach in the community. I think families would love to know about what we're doing. I think the millennials and the X generation would be very interested in what we're doing with our family services program. So how do we tell that part of the story? And so I think we're going to tap into using technology and creating a membership program that attaches to the story of St. John's specifically. Using a reoccurring membership program is another way that we will reach out to, for example, the thousands of people that come to our famous summer concerts. They come every year, they love us, but they may only know that we have a residential care program, and they may know about the summer concerts, but not necessarily about the other great things that we're doing. So how do we touch base with them throughout the year, not just at the summer concerts? So creating some communication channels using technology, what they're used to. As most people have seen in the last couple of years, giving has changed around the world. The ability to donate right from your phone, from your computer, but also have an engaging conversation that way as well. And so how do we do that and structure that? And then last but not least, reigniting a very strong program that really was the foundational part of St. John's, which was the Women's Auxiliary. So there is great power with women's giving circles these days. So what we'd like to do is reignite the Women's Auxiliary and create a women's giving circle. I call them ex-women for right now because I'm not sure what they'll call themselves. But we will be looking to the women to the community who love St. John's and want to gather in a fun and engaging way, may want to volunteer planting flowers in the spring or driving the cart during summer concerts, but really want to gather again. And so how do we provide that opportunity, at the same time help them understand all the wonderful things that St. John's is doing? So I think people are excited to gather again, and there's a powerful meaning behind women gathering together, and so we'll do that in a nice, new, refreshing way as well. So we'll be looking for members of the new Women's Giving Circle, the ex-women, and also we have great support from the board and the staff for our generosity committee. But now we'll be looking to the community for a couple of influential members to hear their voice and have them represented on that generosity committee. So we'll be looking for a couple of members there as well. So there's lots of ways to get engaged with St. John's.
Thank you for sharing all of that. What if somebody were interested in being on the generosity committee? What attributes are you looking for somebody to engage that way?
Yeah, I think the first one is to be open to learning, right? I think most people have a great fear of fundraising in general. For me, I've never seen it that way. I feel that if you and I are having a conversation and we're sharing the mission of St. John's, which we're very in love with or very passionate about, at the end of the conversation, one of us is going to ask, how can I be a part of that? How can I help? And so being open to learning new processes and a new way of thinking about fundraising is important. Influence in the community is important. But I think those two things are probably strong, because I think with those, we'll get a lot accomplished.
Great. Well, I'm going to go back to Tom and talk a little bit about St. John's history, its origins, and perhaps how we are coming out of what you have phrased and termed our militant modesty. So talk to us a little bit about the beginnings, where this notion of a women's auxiliary fit in the past.
Yeah, certainly. St. John's was started by really a very humble but caring group of people. These were Lutheran leaders in the 1950s. They rightly recognized there was a growing need to care for elders in Yellowstone County who were needing a safe place to live, but who really could no longer stay at the place they were currently calling home. Age and frailty combined were setting in, and so where do people go that we love and care for, our very family members? And they came up with the notion of building a retirement home, a community, and they named it St. John's Lutheran Home. And it was very effective right from the start. It filled up rather quickly. So they had the right notion, and they also had a high degree of ownership to really steward this asset in their community. And they did a very fine job. And one of the ways that Heather's alluded to is this women's auxiliary. Back in the 1950s and then into the 60s, when St. John's opened its doors, as many would recognize, the common pattern was the men, the adults, were working and employed somewhere. Not as many women were as employed in that day as we would see currently. And these women were no different than the men, though. They wanted to make a difference in the world around them. They wanted to help others, bring goodness to others. And they had as high of ownership as the St. John's Lutheran Home Project as the men did. And so they started what was known as the Women's Auxiliary. And they raised funds in support, and this was really crucial in supporting two major features at the time and for many years to come. One was activities. There really was no way from the fees for services, what it cost, in other words, to live at St. John's, that would cover the cost of employing activity leaders so that these residents would be able to engage in life with one another and even beyond St. John's, go on field trips and connect out in the community. The other area of support was having to do with spiritual care. Chaplains, as now, were then also expensive, and again, there were not enough dollars out of the fees charged to residents to support that. So the Women's Auxiliary raised money to support both activities and spiritual care, and those became both beloved features of what the St. John's experience was all about. And they continued this for decades until, reflecting, I would say, the church landscape, women's circles within local congregations also began to fade a bit and diminish in numbers. And as happened in the church, so happened at St. John's. The Women's Auxiliary kind of faded away very quietly and gently. So we're enthused to see it reignite in a new way. We believe women are as eager now as they were then to make a difference in the world. We believe men are as well. That'll be another question we have. How to ignite the men? They didn't even have a men's auxiliary back in the day. So we're eager to see these evolve, but that was the origin of the Women's Auxiliary. It made such an impact, and you can see it when we go back into our records and to read the stories of what a difference this made, and not only in the lives of our residents, but I suspect in the lives of those involved in the auxiliary. They really found great meaning, and it was a great relational connection. So this is part of what our annual fund work is all about, is to reignite women to be engaged again. It'll make a difference.
Yeah. And it's about recognizing that generational shift that Tom spoke of, more women in the workplace, and millennials, and wanting to make a difference. That really is something that drives their philanthropy, is how do I make a difference with my place in the world?
And they want to see it. They want to see what we're doing with it. What are we doing with their donations, and how is their money helping make an impact in real time? And that's what we're talking about doing, is implementing the technology where they can actually see and measure what their impact is.
Absolutely. Well, this is just such a fantastic time to be affiliated with St. John's. It's no lie, our tagline, so much life to live.
Yeah.
A lot of new and transformational things happening in the life of our organization. And we're winding down in our time here, but I'd like to just ask the both of you a little bit, what do you think makes St. John's such a treasure in the community?
I'm going to listen to Heather first because I'm curious, as a new person who has been seeking us out and St. John's seeking her out, what have you observed? And I can add from there.
Yeah, this is a common question actually that a lot of people have asked me since I started at St. John's. And I can confidently say that they are who they say they are. And when I say that, I mean they live their mission. I think I was most impressed during the orientation of coming to St. John's that the first thing they talked about is that every single employee knows the mission and they live it. And then actually seeing people smile at each other, greet each other, welcome each other in all different areas of the 700 employees of St. John's. It was across the board. And so for me, it was, absolutely lovely to have that type of welcome, but also a huge relief in the sense that, wow, this organization really is who they say they are. And they do have so much life to live. And then I'll add, and give.
And give.
Yeah.
And Tom?
Well, I think you're right when it comes to authenticity, Heather. When I first connected in the Billings community, it was in the year 1997, and at that time I was serving as a pastor within a local Lutheran congregation. And so my first connection with St. John's was to walk in as a visiting pastor to one of our parishioners who was nearing end of life. And not only in that visit, but in many, many visits to follow, I had opportunity to observe the staff engage with the residents. There was a great authenticity in their level of care and compassion. I heard from family members of their appreciation also for the great level of care that was being received. And in visiting with residents who were in much stronger health, and I could make many visits with over a number of years, they also found it to be an authentically caring place. So I think that's one of its greatest strengths. That being said, another feature of St. John's that I think makes it work is that it's so many people collectively involved together. So you're bringing to bear a variety of gifts. It's not simply one segment of our community investing, but it's so many people that are investing, and those gifts combined add up to a sum larger than the whole, if you will. It's difficult to measure, it may be difficult to put a finger on it, but there's great capacity there. I think also the staff themselves are a treasure. The staff members, the employees, they tend to stay, especially in leadership roles. That speaks well. Many are very gifted and could be employed elsewhere, but they choose to stay, much like our residents. Even if they exhaust resources, they choose to stay. And St. John's continues to invest back into their lives so that they can continue to grow. And that's a great asset to the St. John's community. I would also add that St. John's, and I know this having been in a board role years ago, very open to innovation and to trying new things. They're willing to risk. It's not a reckless or thoughtless stepping into the future, but it's done so with care, but they're willing to risk and try new things. And they become a leader in the United States in a number of measures, actually, and we see that with some of the grant resourcing we receive. In recent cases, our Innovative at Home program and our Family Services CARES wraparound services program to try to help youth in Montana stay in the home that is theirs versus needing to be placed in foster care. These are organizations beyond us that have reached out and said, we trust what you will do with these resources, so please try to do something innovative with those. Those resources are well placed. There is trust out there for St. John's. It's well earned. So.
And the landscape keeps changing for serving humans throughout the arc of life, and St. John's responds. Yeah. So, well, the last thing I'd like to ask you both to consider is what I ask everybody. If I ran into you on the street or out in the grocery store and learned that you are affiliated with St. John's, I'd say, well, what is your St. John's story? So who would like to respond to what's your St. John's story first?
Well, I have a story that, because I'm so new, it would be, right, how would I have a St. John's story? What would that look like? And I think I asked myself the same question before joining the team, is how do I connect to the residents at St. John's and the mission? And during the holiday season, one of the first friends that I made was a couple in their 70s, and it was at a grocery store. I was getting ready to make tamales for the season, holiday season. They were standing behind me, and the woman behind me said, "Are you making tamales for Christmas?" And I said, "Yes, I am. I wish I knew how to make tamales." And I said, "Well, I'll teach you." And that started the beginning of a great relationship. When I drove home from her house after making tamales with her and her daughter and learned all about this amazing woman who was the first woman to work at the oil refinery, and had 3 amazing daughters, I literally was in tears. And I could say, like, my prayers were answered in what my St. John's connection was. She was my first friend in Billings. So that's the beginning of my St. John's story.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
And Tom, you?
Well, my St. John's story has evolved over the years, going back to 97, but my very latest would be this, because people ask me, knowing that I'm nearing a stage of retirement life in a few years, some have questioned, so why did you want to stay at St. John's for these last years? And the reason is very simply, I love my colleagues in the foundation that I serve with. It's an honor to work with them and to see their passion for what we do. I feel it calls to bear all of my years of life, work, and experience, and I'm so pleased to share all that I have come to learn at St. John's United, with St. John's United, and for the people whom St. John's serves. And so I'm just loving the privilege of being able to finish out my employed years at St. John's United. It's not only a choice of St. John's, I suppose, but it's also been my choice. There have been other opportunities, but it's an honor to stay there, and that's very intentional. So my story is, this is a good place to finish up in the next few years.
Well, and it's our privilege to be a part of the team that you shepherd. And if anybody who's watching would like to connect more with what we're doing at the foundation, what is the best way to reach us?
Yep, for me, I would say email me, my name, Heather Estus. It's hestus@sjlm.org. Email me or reach out to the foundation. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear anything you have to offer for a new person in Billings and at St. John's.
And if you want to go on the web, just stjohnsunited.org, and that'll get you there. And if you're interested in the foundation, click on giving. There will be.
There we are.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your stories. That's another segment of What's Your St. John's Story. Thanks for watching.
For generations, St. John's has united us with its uplifting vision and lives it has touched. There are thousands of stories about St. John's. Prayers answered for a long-awaited adoption, pain-free relief after healing from injury, settling into a new home for the next phase of life, the comfort of compassionate end-of-life care, the joy that comes from volunteering, and at-home help that supports the fullest life. At St. John's, we are creating community and bringing families together. We offer many services for home, health, and family, from childcare, support for an unplanned pregnancy, and physical therapy, to home health care, senior living services, and hospice care. For all times of life, we are here for you. The heartwarming stories of St. John's are woven into the fabric of our community. What's your St. John's story?